Welcome back. Now we're still looking at lessons that South Africa can learn from South Korea's economic success. I'm joined by Dr. Chikozho. Dr. Chikozho, thank you very much for joining me again. I hope you can hear me now. Now, as I said earlier on, there are a lot of successes that we've seen with South Korea. What are some of those that South Africa hasn't seemed to grasp yet?
Yes, good evening. As you are aware, we had our seminar with the South Koreans yesterday. And there are a couple of lessons that South Africa can learn from South Korea. And South Korea managed to do in 50 years what the West or the Europeans could only achieve in 100 years. So we are definitely onto something in terms of the lessons from South Korea. Number one, they came up with a national development plan, a national vision for development, which was very clear that they stuck to and committed to implementing with discipline. So it really, the first important lesson is that you need a committed leadership with a vision, and who will pursue that vision relentlessly until they achieve the economic development objectives that you set up.
Now, Doctor.
Secondly, there was the issue. Yes.
No, you can carry on. I thought you had paused there. It was quite a long pause.
Okay. The second lesson that we learned is that agriculture is a very strong and important component of national development, particularly for developing countries. As you are aware, the Sustainable Development Goals say no one should be left behind. So for people in our rural areas, agriculture is the starting point. It lays the foundation for development in that respect. So we need a clear vision for agricultural transformation. The third and most important issue is the issue of industrialization and manufacturing. You need a clear vision of how to promote manufacturing and industrialization backed by infrastructural development. This will boost the chances of creating more employment, especially in the face of rising unemployment and growing youth population.
Doctor, I'm actually glad you mentioned the National Development Plan. Now, Korea has used a 5-year economic development plan to transform their economy. Now, here at home, we've got our own National Development Plan with a number of targets up to 2030. Now, what would you say has worked well for South Korea, specifically, just looking at it in terms of market, access to market, entrepreneurship, maybe even innovation, things that seem as though we're still lagging behind in those industries, for example?
The South Koreans were very clear about the fundamentals that they needed to address. And that started with promoting skills development, appropriate educational programs that enabled their citizens to transform from a relatively underdeveloped society to a much more developed society, which is based on innovation, research, and technology, science and technology. So from the basic fundamentals, they moved on to development that is based much more on knowledge than physical aspects of development. So they focused a lot on science and technology and provided sufficient skills development programs and projects, a good educational foundation for their citizens, which enabled them to leapfrog from a relatively underdeveloped to a much more developed society. And now you know that they are now leaders, particularly in terms of science and technology.
Now, I can think of lots of Korean products ranging from cars, television, smartphones and home appliances, for example, that have flooded the South African market, but not too many of our exports into their market. I suppose this is one of the biggest differences between our economy and that of South Korea. They export lots of finished products, but we don't.
Definitely. South Korea is one of the Asian tigers, which includes Singapore, Malaysia, Taiwan, and so on. And they have been able to come up with a very clear export-oriented development program that they have pursued relentlessly. And that has enabled them not only to export finished products to our markets, but also to actually set up businesses in the countries that they are exporting to. So you will find that we have Samsung, for instance, or Hyundai, the car manufacturer. They have offices in different countries where they are exporting. So they are creating employment in those countries that they are exporting to, and they have pursued that export orientation very seriously. Whereas for ourselves, we are still more focusing on the local market. And that could make a big difference if we can break that, make that breakthrough in terms of export orientation.
Now, small, medium enterprises have been crucial in South Korea's industrial strategy. I mean, this is something that, for example, our government has established, that we need to support SMEs in order to reach, for example, radical economic transformation. But let's look at the support that SMEs get here at home. Are we supporting SMEs enough to ignite an innovative economy as we've seen in the East Asian economies?
SMEs are critical to the success of any developing country, I think. I think the South African government has made the necessary baby steps, the initial steps in terms of policy and support programs for SMEs. I'm sure the Department of Trade and Industry has a couple of programs that provide support to SMEs. So it's a very important component. We may not have done enough, but I think effort in that direction should continue. The first steps have been made, and we need to continue effort in that direction.
Another issue is that of land, and it has long been an emotive issue in South Africa, and it will no doubt remain a contentious one going forward. But this is an area that we share similarities with South Korea, which has been credited with one of the most successful land reform programs. Your take on some learnings that we can take from them?
May you come again? I don't think I got that clearly.
Just in terms of land reform, what can we learn from South Korea, considering that they have been credited with having one of the most successful land reform programs?
Oh, yes. Land reform is crucial. I think at the beginning I said no one should be left behind. If we are going to uplift our rural areas, land and agricultural development are critical components. So the South Koreans were very convinced that land reform and agrarian transformation provide the necessary base for uplifting the rural areas. So for us, it's a learning point, and I think even since 1994, the South African government was aware that land reform is crucial, and a particular program on land reform was implemented, but we need to focus on the fundamentals of agrarian transformation to make sure that that program is successful and enables transformation of the rural landscapes.
Doctor, unfortunately, we've run out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. That was Dr. Claudius Chikozho, Executive Director of the Africa Institute of South Africa.